What if we turn the narrative around a little bit? And I think that's somehow the challenge that we are facing. Instead of thinking of climate as vulnerability, as risk, but let's try to change or to turn around that narrative. If climate becomes Liberia's greatest opportunity to unlock investment, I think that's something that we need to start reflecting on. Because when we talk about climate, we all think of the floods and natural disasters and so on. But what if we think of climate as the great potential for investment for Liberia? Investment to build infrastructure, to create jobs, to modernize agriculture. Because the whole issue of climate smart agriculture is about modernizing the way we practice agriculture and expanding renewable energy and to accelerate the goals of the AID, but also. So for us, that's why the NDC 3.0 must not remain a plan on paper. I think the ED has talked about it. For us, the NDC must move beyond a plan. It has to be an investment blueprint for Liberia. It has to be an instrument that attracts billions in finance and in technology. It should be for us a vehicle to build a new Liberia, green, inclusive, and globally competitive. Climate change can give us that. If we think of climate as an opportunity, a big opportunity for investment. And as I said, the opportunities are immense. A lot of money is flowing into capital, into climate financing. Just to give you a figure, in 2023 alone, global climate finance has reached over 1.3 trillion US dollars. So now the question is, how can Liberia tap into this vast flow of resources and channel them into our priorities, into our forests, our renewable energy, our agriculture, but also how do we use that to build resilient cities? But I do believe that for us in Liberia to do that, we must be bold. Because, as you know, small steps will not bring transformative change. If we are not bold enough in climate action, if you don't dream big, if you don't do big things on climate, of course, there is no way that we're going to be having transformative change. So then Liberia, through this NDC and beyond, needs big ambitions, ambition that send a signal to the world that this country is open for climate smart business. For example, ambition that look into establishing Liberia as a hub for renewable energy in West Africa. If we are able, if this country is able to unlock the potential of rivers, of the sun and of the wind, Liberia has a good chance to become a big hub for renewable energy. So, but that has to be, we have to be bold. We could position our forests not only as the lung of Africa, but as the premium asset of global carbon market. And I think the ED has talked about it. The forest in Liberia could be, if we use them, I mean, yeah, of course, we always brand them as the lung of the Guinea forest. But if we turn around a little bit the narrative and see what is the capital potential that we could have in those forests, rather than seeing them only as, the lung of Africa. But what can we do to turn them as a global hub for carbon market? I think that's another challenge. And turning also our agriculture into a model of climate-smart food production that feeds the people of Liberia, but also exports in the other regions. So these are questions that challenges I'm throwing to all of us, because I think we need to have that mindset shift from climate planning to climate investment. And for me, I am a climate expert. I'm an environmentalist. I have led UNDP's work on climate change in Africa for 6 years. I have helped the African countries to negotiate for the Paris Agreement. I have worked with the African group of negotiators for 6 years. So this is something I believe in. When I talk about climate, when I think climate, I try to shift my mind a little bit and see what is in there for us as Africa in terms of economic transformation and so on. So let me probably come up with 3 big ideas that I want to share with us today. First of all, if we could, in Liberia, establish what I call a National Green Investment Facility, which will be a platform to de-risk projects, to bring crowd in private investment, and to help blend international climate finance with local resources. Do we have such a vehicle in Liberia, ED? I don't think we have that. Do we have that? No. So I think we need to start looking into that National Green Investment Facility so that we bring all that together. Because what happened is we have so many things going on, so many small little projects, so many partners working on this and on that. But do we have a platform that brings all of that together for maximum impact on what we do? So that's what I call a National Green Investment Facility. And UNDP and the UN will be much more happy to work with the government to do that. As I said, this facility could serve as the Liberia one-stop shop for green investment, packaging project in renewable energy, agroforestry, ecotourism, and resilient infrastructure, for example. The second one would be if we leverage the whole innovative financing instruments, climate bonds, carbon credits, debt for climate swap, for example, and so on and so forth. I think now we're starting with the climate, the carbon credit, but there are many other instruments that exist, and we know countries in Africa that have succeeded into putting those instruments in place. Next month in Washington, there will be the Liberia Diaspora Investment Conference. How do we make sure that diaspora bonds, the whole investment that is flowing outside to the country from the diaspora, is climate smart? How do we make that happen? I don't even know, ED, if that during that discussion in Washington, the issue of climate investment, climate opportunities will be discussed. That would be a great opportunity to start looking into those. Third, we must create a pipeline of bankable projects that are aligned with the NDC and the AID, for example. Because as far as I know, investors do not finance vision. They finance projects. If we are able to set up a bankable pipeline of projects into the climate, in climate action, when I say climate, I put energy, all of them in there, agriculture and everything. I think that would be that would be great, because it will help us to do feasibility studies, come up with business models, and risk-sharing mechanisms that turn aspirations into investment-ready opportunities for the country. So, for me, that's the way forward. I know the NDC is very good. So, for us, as I said, the NDC must not be seen only as an environmental obligation, but rather something that I call the Liberia Development Passport to global investment community. And I think the whole discussion we will have in Belém during the COP, for the first time, Liberia will have a pavilion, and there will be many side events. One of them, of course, will be into how do we transition from an NDC plan to turn the NDC into an investment opportunity for Liberia. So, ladies and gentlemen, Liberia UNDP is very committed to walking this journey with you, with the EPA, with the government of Liberia, to mobilize finance, to build the capacity, and to connect Liberia with the global market and global partners. But the real leadership must come from here, from Liberia, from the bold decision taken tonight and in the month ahead. So thank you once again for the opportunity. I think UNDP is a good partner of the for EPA. So there are many challenges. I think for me, as I said, the most easy part is to design the NDC, but how do we transition the NDC in terms of implementation, but also turning it into an investment opportunity for the country to mobilize capital for climate action. I thank you.
Thank you, Aliu. So the NDC cannot just be a climate instrument, but there's an opportunity that the NDC can be an economic manifesto for Liberia. And the insights around a national green investment facility is something that is quite useful to explore. We also have the opportunity to leverage innovative financing, including debt for nature swap, green bonds, and other innovative initiatives that other countries are making millions from already. A pipeline of bankable climate action projects that are aligned with the AAID can indeed be the wheels upon which the NDC is operationalized. Thank you very much for those insights. At this point in time, we will now welcome the distinguished resident coordinator of the United Nations, Madam Christine Umotuni, for her brief remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Honorable ministers present and senior government officials, ED, and other heads of institutions, UN colleagues, dear partners. It's a pleasure to join you in this high-level, I won't call it a high-level dinner, we just been told it's more than a dinner, it's a high-level conversations on the NDCs. I believe that hearing everybody speaking, these days you feel like it's time for Liberia to go bold on many things. So I think this is a great opportunity to gather here and as Liberia advances its nationally determined contribution, the NDCs, and go through the whole report and see what it tells us. Of course, as I said, this is very timely because there are so many things that need to, we need to leapfrog, we need to think big, to do quite a lot. And everything needs to lead towards some sort of a transformative approach, but also looking inside us on how to work from our domestic resources to translate all that into investment opportunities, as my colleague said. So, of course, every time I stand up in these situations, there will be a lead UN agency. In this case, it's UNDP. In some countries, I think they work closely with UNEP. We don't have UNEP in this country, but UNDP is leading on this. But just so to say that everything is interlinked and all agencies in one way or another are implicated. I believe if we go to look into the recommendations that come out of this report, everybody is implicated from the UN family. Therefore, I think it's a moment to commit, because I know that there are over, I think even quite a number of UN agencies that are engaged on this globally. So we really want to thank UNDP collaborating with the government to be working on this. And on the government side or national side also, we know that many institutions, for it to make sense, there's so many people and so many institutions that have to be involved. Therefore, coordination is always something very important. That's why I feel it's very important that we meet in this forum from all walks of life to get briefed on this and to see where we all bring our different competencies to make sure that this moves forward. And I think Aliu said something important. Also the speaker before him around making sure that we look at climate not only in terms of disasters, but in terms of resilience and economic development. So as we prepare for the various global moments that are going to take place, I know that the General Assembly is upcoming, and also the COP. I know that the Secretary General will be making various messages and special sessions on climate ambition at the UN General Assembly. We really hope that Liberia, again, can stand up as a leader on this, coming up with innovations that, you know, sort of trigger everybody's thinking, you know, to say that Liberia is talking and is talking loud. So I believe that with whatever we found out, with some of the innovations that colleagues are talking about, Liberia can position itself to be strong, to align with the climate action and the sustainable development goals, and bring out a special model. And as I can see, it will have to be a model of integrated planning, national ownership, but linking climate action with development. So I believe that 1 or 2, 3 of certain initiatives could come up such that we stand in those spaces, but with sort of showing leadership in some areas, and I think this is a moment not only for Liberia. Liberia rebranding can't be empty. I mean, it has to be filled with these kinds of initiatives that show Liberia in another format. So I really want to encourage these high-level conversations and the stakeholders who are here to be fully engaged, to be very ambitious, and to deepen collaboration, not only between the UN, but between the various institutions, and to make sure that, as been said before, all this is linked to national development. I also feel that when we talk about the NDC 3.0. I've seen a portal. I think the UN has come up with a portal. Most of these days, things are made simplified by technology. So I think we need to embrace this technology and get ourselves abreast with this portal, make sure that the nation is using it, because this is how we will be helped to track progress and to showcase results as we keep working. And I believe that Liberia's success will be part of the story that we could be talking on the road to COP 30. But I always stand in these kinds of meetings and I say that, we make many recommendations, we make many big statements. My only call while I stand here is a call for action and to focus on a few actions that we are able to achieve. And I say this because right now, within the UN working with government, we are working on many reports. Today it is the NDC, but I know that in the morning UN Women was telling us about CEDAW. The other time we're talking about the UPR, the CRC will be coming up. I believe that all these things are interconnected and that recommendations that come out of that, we need to grab them and make sure that we come up with concrete action. So again, I want to wish you wonderful discussions. I think it's not good to keep this in many speeches, rather for us to see the report, to interrogate it, and to seriously see how we prioritize and how we link this to Liberia's moment. I call this a Liberia moment in many aspects, in many ways. So today we talk to the NDCs. Let those also be a contribution, a significant contribution, a clear contribution to transforming Liberia. I thank you so much.
Thank you there, Madam RC. You struck some very key chords. Everyone here is implicated, whether it's from academia, whether it's from agriculture sector, the private sector, civil society, the UN system, the government. We are indeed all implicated. And there's been a lot of interagency collaboration and coordination from the UN system in terms of supporting the government in getting this NDC where it is, whether it's from UN Women, UNICEF, WHO, UNFPA, FAO. There's been tremendous level of collaboration. And from the government side, there's also been similar level of collaboration, from the different NDC focal points, agriculture, forestry, energy, waste, health. All have been working together collaboratively to have the NDC where it is. Coordination is indeed a very key instrument, and like the RC said, Liberia can stand as a leader with innovation that triggers everyone thinking. And as we prepare ourselves to move to the COP, there is a need for action beyond the words, beyond reports. How do we operationalize the recommendations that emerge from here? It's quite critical, and we hope that we will get some interesting policy directives from here that will further inspire the NDC. At this point in time, I would like to welcome the Deputy Minister for Economic Management. And I'm very excited to welcome him because, as a matter of fact, the Deputy Minister now was a consultant for UNDP who supported the drafting of the NDC Financing Investment Plan for NDC 2.0. So we now have the we now have a consultant sitting in the position of a policy maker. So we know what dynamism that means for NDC 3.0. Thank you.
Deputy Minister Tanner Bronson, our distinguished Senator, Senator Taylor, Executive Director of EPA, our distinguished partner, the driver of our development program, the UNDP and the ROC. Good to be back here tonight. And I want to say thank you, first of all, to the EPA, the FDA, and all our government agencies that have been working together to have reached to this point. On behalf of the Minister of Finance, we want to appreciate you. We want to say thank you for what you are doing. Like I said this morning, during similar engagement like this, the issue of climate change should be something we take it more like a national duty, void of any responsibility, but challenging ourselves as a country, as a people, to know that whatever action we take now is not only for us, it's for the next generation. And seeing ourselves to be having a session where we socialize to look at NDC 3 at the Ministry of Finance, I will admit that we have not fully taken responsibility, and we think that it's about time now we really get actively involved. I've listened to the two speakers before me, and there are a lot of opportunities being listed using climate as an opportunity for development. Not only looking at what it is for financial aspect, the benefit, we need to be looking at it more from the innovative perspective that if we are going for the financing, what happened to our development vision? And the good thing about Liberia right now is that President Bouaka, from the time he expressed his political ambition, he was very definite on what he wants. And that itself, he played with it, he toured with it. Even sometimes before presidency, and you sit with him, he will catalog almost everything it takes to look at the opportunities we have in the country. And how can we maximize the use of the resources? And we want to say thanks to our partners. With your support, with the support of the Deputy Minister for Planning, we have now the National Development Plan that also encapsulates even the NDC and everything we think about along with the SDG implementation. We are challenged. I have 3 points I want to touch here. Mr. Res Rep, thank you for listing almost all of the opportunity we have. As a country, I think we have some strategic objective laid out already in the SDG, AARD. One good thing that there is that while we are looking at the bond issuance, we're looking more to what the president wants, energy security. The energy security, in terms of low carbon initiative, renewable energy, these are all the things that are already being outlined. And I believe that the NDC 3.0 is going to be giving us the leeway on how we can achieve these goals. In fact, the most important aspect of it is that we talk about social protection component of the AARD. We outline the issue of improved health, disaster risk reduction, and almost everything that are needed. Even though in terms of climate change, more people think about the disaster side, but there are more opportunities that are also listed under our AARD for us to achieve. What we need most, which I want to emphasize here, is the coordination, collaboration, cooperation, and communication. We need to coordinate among us as key stakeholders from the government, the governmental level, ministerial, intersectoral conversation that will help us, collaboration with our partners, and even with other sectors to ensure that we achieve this target. And the most important thing, cooperation has to do with who is doing what, how can we do it best, and how can we improve it. Among the agencies, if agriculture is thinking about smart agriculture, it has more to do with land usage. And land authorities should also know that without their support, we cannot achieve smart agriculture. And a smart agriculture cannot also be a team without the support of the EPA. And without the support of EPA, we still have an argument to see what happened to the forests. Do we still have to focus on reforestation? What are the opportunities we have as a country to maximize the use of our resources? And I think where we are is where the conversation is going. Tomorrow, I'm told that we'll be converging to Ganta. We started a conversation today, and I believe the conversation will end in Ganta. The Ministry of Mines and Energy, Ministry of Agriculture, the EPA, the FDA, the UNDP, UN Women, the entire UN agency. We are asking for you to please join us in preparing an instrument that will actually give us the pathway to our carbon market mechanism. Let me say this. We need a collaborative effort that can help us to get into our carbon market mechanism. I'm bringing this point because in terms of carbon market, Africa has all the resources, including Liberia. But what has actually happened to us is that the poor management of these resources has left us poor. And therefore, in this new dispensation, with the paradigm shift in the ODA, it is about time that we critically review where we went wrong, how we went wrong, and what went wrong, so that we can correct our error. Lastly, the full vision we have under President Bouaka, with all of the papers we have, over 365-page document. There are only a few words that are there that are very important to all of us, for me. That what brought me back to Liberia and what brought me to where I am. He said, the slogan is there. He said, we should first of all think Liberia. When someone says think about something, it means that your mind, mental concentration, everything should be on something. And the thinking don't have to do with what it is now, but what it's going to be like in the future. We should use these words very carefully. Think Liberia, meaning that it's about time to put everything first, Liberia first, not ourselves. Not to put you on the spot. The University of Liberia president is here. The academia have become a place where we're supposed to be bringing more thinking, critical minds need to assemble to think about what happened to us as a country. And that is very much important for all of us. The NDC is a work from consultant. I want us to reach a point where we are looking at ourselves as people who have their own original and creative thinking to make Liberia better. We still need that critical minds to be thinking beyond just the NDC. What is going on now is that the technological world has changed. RC and I can talk. She has done a lot in Liberia. The rest rep, UNICEF, almost all the partners are here. But they have what we call time-bound initiative, time-bound assignment. But those of us, Liberian, we got lifelong obligation. So therefore, we got to be thinking not only for the current position we're in, but for the future of this country. The next thing the president always emphasizes is to love. Anything you love, you protect it. Anything you love, you protect it. So it's about time that our climate, our environment, our natural resources be the area where we show our love through our commitment to protect it and also preserve it for our next generation. And lastly, is to build it. Mr. E.D., the Climate Change Secretariat, my own brother from the UNDP, this conversation should not only be about dinner. I want this conversation to be a continuous conversation in the 4C that I mentioned, communication. It should be very much important too. Development communication is very much key. Sometimes the way you communicate your idea is rarely received by the citizen, and the way you communicate your idea is also rejected by the citizens. We are still struggling with how Liberian people can understand the issue of climate change, carbon, and the rest of it. It is about time that the communication component of this document be prioritized. Today, I want to say thank you for the time. We have had more speakers ahead of me. I want to say, as you take your dinner, as President Bogart mandated us, we should all think about how best we can change the game. We propose $500 million in 2021 for the NDC implementation. I want to see how did we use the $500 million and where did we go. It's a need for us to take stock, and see how far have we improved from 2021 to 2025. And with this, we would think that this identical NDC 3.0 will be a success. I thank you.
Thank you there, my dear brother and friend, former consultant, now minister. So the minister also struck some very important points. It's about time that the MFDP, which is the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning, takes full responsibility. The president himself has been focused on how do we optimize the benefits from the country's resources, including those benefits from our climate endowment. The NDC should be looking more towards the energy security because, we've all seen over the last few years how energy can transform economic growth in this country. Ghana is a classic example. NDC 3.0 should provide us a leeway. Resilient energy is quite key. The issue of social protection, as a matter of fact, and we are excited that the current NDC has made significant gains, for example, on the issue of gender inclusion, which is something that Professor Kamo will share with us shortly. Collaboration, coordination, and communication. Those three elements are quite crucial to drive climate action in this country. And in whatever we do, including the discussions that will follow the presentation, we must think Liberia, love Liberia, and build Liberia. With that mindset, we are hoping that this strategic dialogue can really inform the next trajectory for the NDC. We will have two very brief presentations, very strategic. And those presentations are primarily focus on provoking the thinking and discussions that will follow. The first presentation, very brief, will talk about the NDC, where we came from, where we are, and where we are heading. You know, what gains have we made? The minister talked about stock taking. With the NDC, one, Minister Tane Bronson here was the one who launched that NDC. With the NDC 2, now we are at NDC 3. What have we gathered from that? On the global stock take, it has shown that even with all of the commitments that countries have made, the global climate goal of reducing temperature by 1.5 degrees Celsius, we are far from achieving that goal, even with all of the commitments. So it calls for more robust ambitions, you know, and more commitment from all parties. So the presentation will talk about what Liberia has achieved from its goal and what additional commitments do we intend to make as a country. Then we will have a very brief presentation again. NDC, as was stated by Aliu, is not just an environment or climate tool. It must represent an economic manifesto. How does the NDC align with our sustainable development goals? If you look at Liberia's NDC, what specific goals is, Liberia NDC linked to all of the 15 goals, right? But what specific goals are showing strong alignment to the Liberia NDC, and what specific goals are showing potential for strong transformation across Liberia? So we'll now take those very brief presentations, and afterwards we can have our dinner and get the energy that we require to go into the thought-provoking discussions and insights that will now guide us as we move forward. So at this point in time, we will call on the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change Focal Point for Liberia, and who is also the Chief Technical Advisor, Professor Benjamin Camo, who will lead us into the presentation. Why these documents were presented by, prepared by consultants, they've been driven by national experts in country. Liberia has some very renowned experts, Professor Camo himself being one. So, Prof. Camo, it's all yours. Thank you. Please welcome him.
I can be controlled. Thank you, Tumit. International dignitaries here present, national government officials here present, members of the national legislators here present, heads of higher institutions here present, other distinguished guests. I will try to be brief. As you may all know, Liberia started the preparation of her nationally determined contribution prior to the 2015 Paris Conference. Under the Paris Agreement, countries are required to report after every 5 years in terms of those actions being undertaken to address the issue of climate change. So in 2015, Mr. Tumbet was one of the consultants that helped us to prepare what we called at the time the initial nationally determined contribution. To date, we are here presenting on the stock taking of the NDC2 and in terms of what we have done as it relates to the NDC3. Normally when I'm talking to dignitaries, I prefer to come down low because the essence is we want for the dignitaries to understand. More often we say NDC, but I prefer to call Climate Action Plan. So it makes it much easier for all of us. So basically that is the agenda in terms of the progress we have made as a country. NDC3 in terms of those ambitions and at the same time outstanding tax and components. Liberia's nationally determined contribution, NDC2, was characterized with a very high ambition. We committed in terms of reducing our greenhouse gases by 64%, conditionally or unconditionally. So it was one of those NDC 2 that was very, very ambitious. So today we want to see where we are. On the stock taking, that is 2021 to 2025, we reported our NDC 2 in 2021. So when we did the stock taking, we observed that we did extremely well as it relates to the energy sector. As you may know, the energy sector was one of the sectors under the INDC, and even when we did our national greenhouse gas inventory, the level of emission from the energy sector was very high. But when the hydro came into operation, that helped to reduce our emission, and presently efforts are being made in terms of generating more energy. So under the NDC 2, we account for 105 megawatts in hydropower generation and 5.6 megawatts in solar panel. In terms of transport, we recorded the introduction of 175 electric vehicles, and in the forestry sector, we were able to reforest 45,814 hectares. Total reduction in terms of emission reduction amounts to 848.34 gigaton carbon dioxide equivalent, representing 20.4% of the targeted GHG reduction by 2024. Now, when you do an NDC, I'm happy the minister is here who wants also serve as a consultant in terms of costing. We estimated a big amount. In terms of our estimation, we recorded 490,590,000 as the investment as it relates to the NDC. In terms of mitigation, 400,645,000, that's the amount we targeted. And then in terms of adaptation, 89,945,000. So far, so good in terms of what we have done in country as a government and people. We have been able to account 573.44 billion. In terms of disbursement, 202.95 billion. So that's where we are. That's a figure in terms of support received on project, technical assistance, in terms of mitigation, cross-cutting, adaptation, ongoing, those that we are able to conclude, plan, and others. In terms of project, we account for 93%. That is in terms of support, while 7% as it relates to technical assistance. For mitigation accounts for 56%, while adaptation 16%, and cross-cutting 27%. In terms of where we are, ongoing activity 70%, concluded 16%, planned 8%, and others 6%. In terms of fundings, on our NDC 3, there are a lot of activities. As we speak, we were able to look at laws and policy in various sectors. On the issue of capacity building, we recorded the establishment of the University of Liberia, of the National University Climate Action Lab, the certificate program in climate change. There's an ongoing training as it relates to the greenhouse gas inventory of the country, and that's going to help us as we prepare for the carbon market. As it relates to institutional effectiveness, we have the overarching body, that is the National Climate Change Steering Committee. We have the Secretariat that is supporting the committee. For now, at least we have established a functional desk that has to do with climate change at the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning, and at the same time, the Policy Council at the EPA has been revitalized and is active. On the issue of MRV, we have established focal points in major government institutions in terms of reporting on the progress of our NDC. When we did our NDC, it's unfortunate to report that we did not take into consideration gender. In 2008, Liberia flagged the issue of gender in the international climate change discussion, but when we did our NDC, for whatever reason, we did not factor the issue of gender. So it's one of those gaps. At the same time, the issue of children, youth, we did not consider. So NDC 3 will ensure that we factor new emerging issues like fresh water, gender, watch, youth, and children. So this process has been a consultative process, meaning the EPA did not sit in Monrovia. We have been out there in the counties, making sure that we organize regional consultations. There was a consultation that has to do with children. There was a consultation that has to do with youth. And at the same time, we were able to consult major national documentation. And at the same time, there has been expert review workshop. To date, we are here in terms of soliciting the support, the cooperation, the collaboration, the communication, and the coordination from this important audience. We think that this important audience is critical enough to help the EPA under the leadership of Dr. Yakpawolo to ensure that Liberia produce an ambitious nationally determined contribution. 3, that will reflect the views, the aspirations of the government and people of Liberia. As you may know, Bill 5 of the AARD talks about ensuring environmental sustainability, at the same time, how do we enhance climate resilience. So in terms of targets and sectors as it relates to 2.0, under 2.0 we had about 6 mitigation actions, and at the same time 8 adaptation actions. And in solving the climate crisis, mitigation and adaptations are the 2 major means that we normally target in solving this climate crisis. We also intend to consider gender, again, like I said, youth, children, watch, and the issue of loss and damage. More often when we talk about climate change, there is always the focus as it relates to climate-induced disaster. Just recently, the EPA and the National Disaster Management Agency participated in a regional workshop that will build the capacity of the government to access the loss and damage fund. Again, it will help us as a country in addressing our climate resilient actions. In terms of institutional framework, yes, we have the National Climate Change Steering Committee. In fact, just today, there has been called for the inclusion of some relevant ministries and agencies, and at the National Climate Change Steering Committee meeting this morning, we highlighted the importance of the Ministry of Internal Affairs, since that we are preparing in terms of accessing carbon money, and the role of the Ministry of Internal Affairs and others will be very important. Again, the EPA continues to play the overarching role as being the national designated authority in terms of reporting as it relates to the UNFCCC process, as it relates to collection of data. We coordinate policy and implement most of our activities with various land ministries and agencies. So we hope that those ministries, agencies, and commissions will continue to support us as we move toward reporting our NDC 3. Outstanding tax and components. Now, in order for us to have a good NDC, we need a very good modeling, what we call the GHG modeling. So it's one of those tax that is outstanding, because a good modeling will tell us our level of emission, and that level of emission will help us in terms of policy. How do we influence policy? How do we be able to identify those appropriate mitigation actions? And at the same time, how do we address the issue of adaptation? Implementation plan is very important, and resource mobilization. As we speak, Dr. Yakbalo has secured funding in terms of the implementation and mobilizing a strategy. UNEP, again, will come in to assist us. There's a need for us to have the private sector dialogue. The private sector is very key, and at the same time, we intend to have a technical validation that will give us the opportunity in terms of agreeing and finalizing those mitigation and adaptation actions. And at the end of the day, there will be a regional and national validation. And once that is done, means that we will be able to complete our NDC 3, where Dr. Yakbalo will now present that document to His Excellency for all world submission, for his approval, and then thereafter we submit to the UNFCCC Secretary. So in conclusion, Liberia's NDC represents a comprehensive and strategic approach in terms of our climate actions. We intend to deploy a rigorous modeling exercise in terms of having a realistic estimation of our NDC. We want to make sure we incorporate implementation and financial plans. We want to ensure that we have a good technical validation, and thereafter, once that is done, we will be at the end of completing our NDC, and then that will help Liberia, or will position Liberia to reset its climate targets and action, thereby reaffirming our commitment to the global climate agenda under the Paris Agreement. On that note, we want to say thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Kamo. So, Liberia committed to reduce 64% of its greenhouse gas emission compared to the business as usual scenario. As of the stock take done so far, from the last NDC, we've achieved a little over 20%. So there's like almost 40% outstanding that we have to achieve between now and 2030. So it means that there's room for more ambition and more commitment. In terms of financial resources, of the 490 plus million that was earmarked for the NDC, close to 50% has been realized through government funding as well as funding from development partners, including the World Bank, the African Development Bank, the UN system, and several other partners. The last NDC has some gaps. Though the issue of youth and gender were integrated in the NDC, but the targets were not responsive. For example, if you're talking about specific targets on agriculture sector, how does that speak to the needs and vulnerabilities of youth, of women. So the current NDC intends to build on that by enhancing ambition and clarity in terms of how the NDC responds to the needs of gender-specific groups. The NDC has been quite inclusive, drawing on the participation of youth, women, children, persons with disabilities, and different sectoral entities. Now, as we move forward, Liberia remains committed to submitting its next NDC with enhancement or addition of additional sectors. You will note from the presentation that the key driver for Liberia reducing greenhouse gas emission has been the energy sector. While agriculture and forestry has contributed, but investment in hydro energy has been the key driver. So with more investment in renewable energy, in clean energy, Liberia can be a carbon neutral country by 2050. That's the target set in the last NDC. And I believe we remain in line for achieving that target, but that will require more investment in the energy sector. And quite recently, Liberia presented its energy compact, the Energy Compact 300, which talks about how the government intends to invest more in renewable energy. And if you look at Liberia, the hydro energy potential for Liberia is quite enormous. Solar, there are different renewable energy potential for Liberia. What is required is the investment, and we hope that the NDC, using some of the innovative financing tools, can mobilize the required investment that can ensure that Liberia can be a carbon neutral country. You already aware that Liberia holds more than 42% of the remaining Upper Guinea forest. Liberia is a carbon sink. Liberia is sequestering carbon has been emitted by other countries, and we hope that with a carbon readiness framework in place in the next few years, Liberia can start to generate revenue from its global actions in terms of carbon sequestration. Thank you once again, Professor Benjamin Kamo. At this point in time, I will invite a colleague who is visiting Liberia, West Africa for the first time. She's from Tanzania, and she works at our regional bureau for Africa, particularly on SDG integration. They've been very key in supporting us in country, looking at Liberia's NDC. The deals we've made, how does those deals amount to supporting the 17 Sustainable Development Goals? And from that analysis, they really want to catalog specific areas where the potential are enormously high for driving Liberia's development in the next few years. So Miriam, it's over to you. Thank you. Can you please
thank you. Thank you very much, Abraham. Distinguished guests, allow me to stand on the existing protocol. I think, as Abraham said, it is my first time in Liberia, and I learned it the hard way yesterday. I think next time I need to tell them I'm from East Africa, so they go easy on the pepe. Because I got a shock. But I know that I'm the person that is standing between you and your food, so I'll try to be as brief. And I think the advantage of being the last person is that everything has already been covered. UNDP is supporting this work on NDC SDG insights in all continents. And of course in Africa we are supporting 5 countries. And Liberia is leading the way because these insights are supposed to trigger a conversation and convene policymakers together to make a case for an enhanced NDC. And among all the countries that we are supporting in Africa, I think Liberia is the first one to have this dialogue. So we are also hoping to learn lessons that we can also apply in other countries. And I think just to give you a bit of a background on what triggered this work, I think a lot has already been said. Among the key challenges that most countries have been facing in terms of formulating and also implementing the NDCs, one has been the weak link between NDC and development planning. you have the NDC, but it does not have the muscle in terms of being linked with resources and the broader development objectives. And another thing I think a lot has also been said on the financing aspect, but also in some other countries, the weak oversight in terms of monitoring the implementation. But I think I've also heard that in Liberia, there is a national steering committee that brings together all sectoral ministries together. So I think that is also a good example that we can apply. The main aim of this insight, I think, as it has already been said, is to change the narrative of climate action and linking it to development. And here it's not just, the changing the narrative, but finding what actions from the NDCs deliver the most in terms of, the broader development objective, whether you want to look at the SDG framework, or if you want to look at the arrest agenda for inclusive development in this case. So this report just builds the development narrative of Liberia, and then it looks at the NDC and the development plan, how are they aligned with the broader global goals, and it also looks at what interlinkages are there in terms of the NDC actions that deliver the most on the SDGs. So in simple terms is killing two birds with one stone, that you deliver on your climate ambition, but also you deliver on the priority that has been set out in the development plan. And of course the final part is the most important on, after you've gotten the policy accelerators, how do you mobilize financing to deliver on those? So in terms of the development narrative, I think you know Liberia better than myself. In terms of the Human Development Index, Liberia is currently sitting at 177 out of 193 countries. So it shows you that a lot needs to be done in terms of human development, but also, as it has been the ambition of 64% that has already been presented, so I will not go into details on that. But this is where I want you to focus the most. The insights use the International Futures Model, and they also use the AI-driven tools to look at the documents and compare them to the SDGs. So it scans the document. You can put, I think the model is open source. So you can take any strategy or any development plan or any strategic document that you have, and it just scans through it, and it tells you in summary from the SDG angle, what is it contributing the most to. So if you look on the left, on the NDC, of course you'll see SDG 7 on affordable and clean energy, and 11 sustainable cities and communities, and of course, as expected, life on land are the most prominent SDGs that are coming out. But then looking at the arrest agenda, the SDGs that are prominent, as you can see, is SDG 8 on decent work and economic growth, but also you see SDG 16 on peace, justice, and strong institutions. And what we are trying to see here is, are there synergies between the NDC and the development plan, or are there gaps? Are there points that are consistent in both of them that we can leverage on to deliver on both? So this is the picture that we have based on the documents in Liberia. And then we go to the NDC and we break it down, looking at the mitigation and also the adaptation. All the actions that are there, how are they linked into SDGs and which SDGs are prominent in terms of delivery. As you can see from the mitigation side, SDG 8, which is the priority of the development plan, has a lot of space showing that the mitigation strategies are contributing the most to that. And if also we look at the adaptation actions, you'll see also 8 SDG 1 and SDG 2 also being prominent. And then we also look at the specific actions from the mitigation and adaptation, and we've tried to group them into sectors so that it is easier to do the analysis further. And of course, the bigger the bubble, the larger the number of actions that are there. And of course, you'll see that we have the most actions on institutional capacity building, training programs, and dedicated financial products and credit. I will not go into detail on that. And of course, now after looking at the alignment or none of, if it is not there, we now move into the interlinkages. And the interlinkages is looking at now the acceleration pathways. What actions deliver the most on the priority areas that are set out in the agenda? And I think the next slide will talk to that. So the good thing about this analysis is it gives you the specific. As you can see here, on the arrest agenda, we had seen SDG 8 being the most prominent. And the actions that contribute the most to all the priority areas of Liberia is the first activity being promoting low carbon agricultural practices, and I think this has also been shared here, but this is validation that priority needs to be set on this activity because, as you can see also on the SDGs, it delivers the most on the priorities that are set out in the development plan. Of course, the second activity is to develop a large solar PV plant. And you can see the SDGs that it contributes to. The third activity is to develop a small hydropower plants. And the fourth activity is also installing medium hydropower plants for rural electrification. So, in a nutshell, given that the resources are also, as we have heard before, the resources are also not enough, if Liberia was to prioritize on these 4 activities, these are the ones that will have more impact on the delivering on both the climate action and also the development priorities. And of course, moving to the last part, which is the finance and stimulus, I think this just gives a background on where Liberia sits at in terms of debt and revenue collection. And of course, as we know, public finance is under pressure, given that there's a lot of development needs. But I think also the RR had pointed out the emerging opportunity is for us to fully commit that we are going to put in the effort to ensure that we crowding the private sector and leverage on private finance. So I think this is the existing, this is the existing opportunity. So in a nutshell, as I said, this insights are just supposed to trigger a conversation. And of course, we have seen in different countries, it has been received differently. For countries that have high emissions, they've used these insights to increase their ambition. There are countries that lacked, cross-sectoral oversight committees. Those have been instituted. For some other countries, this has been increasing the share of the domestic revenue that is allocated into the NDC, because as we have seen, it also delivers on jobs and the priority of the development plan. So I think this is just supposed to bring people together and trigger a conversation that for Liberia, what is going to be the action that is going to set NDC 3.0 differently based on what we've seen here. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you there, Miriam. So you can see from this report that the NDC is not just about climate. The NDC is about economy and jobs. It's about agriculture. It's about food security. It's about gender. It's about so many other things in the, so many other SDGs. So, but there are particular SDGs that stand out. If we implement, for example, the targets on energy, there will be more decent work and economic empowerment in Liberia. That's the evidence that if we invest more in the energy sector, Liberia can become climate resilient, but we can create more resilient jobs and we can better the lives of the people of Liberia in alignment with the arrest agenda. So at this point in time, we're about to start the dinner. The colleagues there will start to direct tables towards the dinner. But all of this work has come with the support of some consultants, mostly national consultants, but there's at least been one international consultant, our colleague from India, Pierre Muna, who has been very much involved in this process. And so we will give all the opportunity for less than 5 minutes while we're also collecting, while we're also lining up and collecting our meals, so that she shares some insights in terms of the analytical work that has informed Liberia's NDC, drawing on some of the best practices, as well as also looking into where are we heading based on the data that we've seen so far, based on the analytics. What are some of the interesting things that we will see in the next NDC, and some of the important areas where we need some inspiration from our political actors. So at this point in time, Muna, are you there? Hello, Muna?
Yes. Hi, am I audible?
Yes, you are. Just hold on 1 minute. Hold on, Mona. Let me put the. Yeah, Mona, you can go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so thanks for this opportunity. I am very happy to be present virtually and have to be part of this discussion and hear the inputs and insights from all the stakeholders. I would just like to mention a couple of points and would, maybe these are some of the things that as country we can discuss and see how we integrate that best in the NDC 3.0. So the work that I was fortunate to start working with UNTP and EPA from the beginning of this exercise, NDC 3 process. I worked with Mr. Orias on the stock take report and then the drafting of the third NDC, and now I'm also working with Isaac on GHG modeling to set the targets. So I am very lucky to be part of all the processes that are currently ongoing in the country towards coming up with a very enhanced, ambitious NDC. What I found very great about this process was the fact it was a very inclusive, transparent process where all the stakeholders were involved, the government stakeholders and development partners as well as private sector. At every point they were conscious effort to involve everyone and to seek their input and make it a very inclusive process. I really